Right, let's jump right into it today. We're going back to 1968. Picture this, a massive tent city right in the middle of the National Mall.
Wow.
It's Resurrection City, the heart of the Poor People's Campaign. And for those of you, who were around back then, you might remember the echoes of this movement, the fight for social justice that was, really taking hold back then.
Yeah.
We're going to take a deep dive into this pivotal moment in American history and try to unearth some insights from the past, see what we can learn.
I think that's such a powerful image, the National Mall, right? Like the heart of American democracy. And to have this tent city, this occupation, it's a bold statement.
It is. And our guide for this deep dive is a really great historical podcast called History Daily, which really gives a detailed account of the campaign.
Okay, cool.
And they highlight this trip to Marks, Mississippi in 1967.
Marks, Mississippi.
Yeah. This was the poorest county in the U.S. at the time, and it was like a turning point for the civil rights movement. Martin Luther King Jr. and Ralph Abernathy, they went there and they witnessed poverty so stark, it really shook them to their core.
Oh, I can imagine. It's one thing to read about poverty, but to actually see it firsthand, to see the faces of people struggling, it must have been a profound experience.
Absolutely.
And, it's interesting because it highlights the connection between, racial injustice and economic inequality, right?
Yes.
So King, he's already, a leader in the fight for civil rights. He sees that the battle has to expand to address poverty, which really plagued, so many people, especially in communities of color.
And it wasn't just King who was impacted. Robert F. Kennedy, who was a senator at the time, he also visited Marks. And he was profoundly affected by what he saw.
Oh, wow.
And History Daily recounts how Kennedy, he actually urged King to bring this issue to the national stage, to Washington, D.C. itself.
I see. So Kennedy saw the need for national attention, for bringing this issue to the forefront of American politics.
Yeah, he really believed that bringing the realities of poverty to the nation's capital would force lawmakers to confront it head on.
Yeah.
Visibility was key.
Makes sense.
And that's where the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, or SCLC, comes in.
Wait, SCLC, right, yeah.
This organization, already a major force in the civil rights movement, they became the driving force behind the Poor People's Campaign.
Okay.
But, as History Daily reveals, not everyone within the SCLC was on board with this new focus.
Interesting. So there was some internal dissent.
There was. Some members, they questioned whether this was the right time to shift focus to poverty, when the fight for racial equality was still raging.
Right.
Others were worried about the potential chaos, and backlash that could result from occupying the National Mall.
Yeah, I mean, it's a risky move, for sure.
It was.
Any movement, even if they're united by a common goal, they're going to have people with, different viewpoints, different opinions.
And King, though, he, with his unwavering belief in the interconnectedness of social justice issues, he pushed forward.
He did.
The vision was bold, to create a multiracial coalition, uniting people from all walks of life who were struggling economically.
A powerful vision to bring together people from diverse backgrounds united by this common struggle.
And he envisioned this massive demonstration on the National Mall, a city of tents, where protesters would live until their demands for economic justice were met.
Wow. So it wasn't just a one-day protest. It was meant to be a sustained occupation.
Right. He knew mass arrests were inevitable, but he believed that the imagery of peaceful protesters being, dragged away, that would galvanize public support and force the government to address the issue of poverty.
So using those powerful images to really shake people awake, to force them to confront the issue.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But tragically, King wouldn't live to see his vision come to fruition.
Right.
His assassination in April of 1968, it sent shockwaves through the nation.
A devastating loss, not just for the movement, but for the country as a whole.
And it left the movement reeling.
Yeah.
The grief and despair were immense, but amidst the chaos, Ralph Abernathy, King's close confidant, he stepped up to lead the campaign.
Oh, wow. What a heavy burden to bear, to try and carry on such a momentous task in the wake of such a loss.
It was. History Daily really captures the weight of that moment.
Yeah.
Abernathy was committed to fulfilling King's vision, but he also made some strategic decisions that differed from King's original plan.
Oh, interesting.
Perhaps the most notable was his decision to pursue a legal permit for the occupation of the National Mall.
Okay, so that's a significant shift. King had planned for deliberate confrontation, right? Believing that mass arrests would draw attention to the cause. And Abernathy, while still committed to nonviolent resistance, he opts for a more, I guess, collaborative approach.
Yeah, it's hard to say for sure why, but perhaps he felt that, in the wake of King's assassination and the subsequent riots, that a less confrontational approach would be more palatable to the public and the government.
Makes sense, trying to find a way to move forward in a very delicate and volatile situation.
He actually met with the Secretary of Agriculture and outlined the campaign's demands.
Okay, so what were those demands specifically? What were they hoping to achieve by occupying the mall?
Well, History Daily details their platform. They were calling for, things like a guaranteed annual income, affordable housing, land reform, expanded access to healthcare and education.
So a pretty comprehensive set of policies aimed at really dismantling systemic poverty.
Exactly. And they actually did get the secretary's support, which was a crucial step in securing the permit for the occupation of the mall.
Wow, so they managed to gain some support within the government itself.
They did. And soon after, Resurrection City began to take shape. Thousands of people from all walks of life converging on Washington, D.C. to demand economic justice.
It's an incredible image, a testament to King's dream and Abernathy's determination to carry it forward.
But, life in Resurrection City wasn't easy.
Right. I mean, living in a tent city, it's not exactly a comfortable existence.
Not at all. History Daily paints a vivid picture of the difficult conditions they endured. Rain and mud turned the mall into a quagmire.
Oh, wow.
Food and supplies were often scarce.
So they were really facing some serious challenges.
They were. And there were internal conflicts and tensions as well.
Oh, I bet.
It was really a microcosm of society with all its complexities and challenges.
Yeah, you bring all these people together from different backgrounds, different experiences, different ideas about how to achieve change, and it's bound to create some friction.
And then, tragically, the campaign would face yet another devastating blow. Just a few weeks after Resurrection City was established, Robert F. Kennedy, a powerful ally who had championed their cause, he was assassinated.
Oh, my goodness. Another assassination. That's just heartbreaking.
It was. The loss of Kennedy was a huge setback for the campaign. It felt like they were losing momentum, facing obstacle after obstacle.
Yeah, just when they needed all the support they could get, they lose another key figure.
It's hard to imagine how they must have felt facing such adversity, but they pressed on, didn't they? They organized demonstrations, met with lawmakers, continued to push for their demands.
Yeah.
And we'll delve deeper into the events that unfolded in Resurrection City, culminating in the powerful demonstration known as Solidarity Day in Part 2.
So, it's really incredible to think about, like, the day-to-day life in Resurrection City, right? We're talking thousands of people living in tents on the National Mall. Right. And History Daily, they really bring that experience to life, like the community meals they had, the makeshift schools, just the constant struggle against the elements.
Yeah, it must have been a really unique experience. I mean, a mix of hardship, but also resilience and this unwavering hope. But, did those hardships start to take a toll as the weeks went on?
They did. The podcast actually highlights an incident where a group of young men were evicted from the camp for harassment and theft.
Oh, wow.
And it seems like there were these tensions brewing between, those who really adhered to King's strict philosophy of nonviolence, and then those who were, growing impatient and frustrated with the lack of progress.
So even within a movement fighting for a common cause, there were still divisions, disagreements. That must have been incredibly difficult for Abernathy to navigate.
Absolutely.
I mean, trying to hold everything together while also grieving the loss of his friend and facing immense pressure from outside forces.
Yeah, and History Daily actually points out how this incident with the young men being evicted, it was really picked up by the media and used to portray the campaign in a negative light, right?
Well, wow.
They were accused of being disorganized, of harboring criminals, and it definitely hurt their image and their ability to gain wider public support.
Yeah, it's so easy for a movement to be derailed by negative press like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And then on top of all of this, they face another blow, the assassination of Robert Kennedy.
Right.
What impact did that have on the campaign?
I mean, the assassination of Kennedy coming so soon after King's death, it really shook the movement, right? He was such a powerful ally,
Yeah.
someone who could, really move the levers of government in their favor. And History Daily describes it as this loss of hope,
Yeah.
this feeling that they were losing all their champions.
Yeah. It's hard to imagine how demoralizing that must have been, But they didn't give up. They pressed on, right?
They did.
Culminating in this massive rally on June 19th, Solidarity Day.
Exactly. Solidarity Day was really like the culmination of all their efforts.
Yeah.
And History Daily describes a crowd of over 50,000 people gathering at the Lincoln Memorial.
Wow.
It was a powerful display of multiracial unity. They had speakers like Coretta Scott King, Rosa Parks, even Vice President Hubert Humphrey,
Wow.
all united in this call to end poverty.
It must have felt like a turning point, a moment of hope amidst all the tragedy and the hardship.
It was, but unfortunately, the high of Solidarity Day was short-lived. Just a few days later, clashes erupted between protesters and police and National Park Service. They refused to extend the campaign's permit.
So Resurrection City was dismantled. Did that mark the end of the Poor People's Campaign?
In a physical sense, yes, but in a broader sense, no. The dismantling of Resurrection City was definitely a setback, but it didn't erase the impact of the campaign.
What do you mean by that? How can we say it wasn't a failure if they didn't achieve their immediate goals?
Well, for one thing, the campaign, it really shifted the national conversation. It forced America to really confront, the realities of poverty and the systemic injustices that perpetuated it.
Yeah.
And secondly, it planted these seeds that would eventually bear fruit in the form of policy changes and social programs.
But even though Resurrection City was gone, the fight for economic justice continued.
Exactly. The Poor People's Campaign was like a spark, right? It ignited this movement.
Yeah.
It didn't burn brightly for long, but it left behind these embers that would continue to smolder and eventually reignite.
That's a really powerful way to put it. But didn't many view the campaign as a failure at the time?
They did, because there weren't these immediate legislative victories, right?
Yep.
And the tent city was dismantled, so the prevailing narrative was one of defeat. And History Daily even touches on how, the campaign was kind of overshadowed by all these other events of 1968, the Vietnam War, the assassinations, the political turmoil.
Yeah, 68 was a really tumultuous year.
It was.
It sounds like the Poor People's Campaign was a bit of a forgotten chapter in American history.
Yeah.
But you're saying that there's more to the story.
Absolutely. The impact of the campaign wasn't immediate, but it was profound. It really laid the groundwork for future movements and policy changes that would address poverty and inequality. And in part 3, we'll explore the long-term legacy of the Poor People's Campaign and how its echoes can still be felt today.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the Poor People's Campaign. We've journeyed through its origins, its struggles, and the establishment of Resurrection City. Now let's explore the lasting impact of this movement.
While the immediate results might have seemed limited, the Poor People's Campaign was kind of like a seed planted in the soil of American consciousness. It took time, but it eventually sprouted, and its effects are still felt today.
I'm intrigued. What are some specific examples of that lasting impact? I mean, how can we draw a line from the events of 1968 to the social programs we have today?
Well, History Daily highlights this direct connection between the campaign's demands and the expansion of school lunch programs. Remember, one of their core demands was for free school lunches for children living in poverty.
Right. A direct response to the heartbreaking deprivation that King and Abernathy witnessed in Marks, Mississippi.
Exactly.
So are you saying that those school lunch programs we have today actually have roots in the Poor People's Campaign?
They do. Within a few years of the campaign, federal programs started to take shape that addressed hunger and malnutrition, particularly among children. By the 1990s, these programs, spurred by the campaign's demands, were providing food and nutritional resources to nearly 8 million infants, children, and pregnant women.
Wow, I had no idea. It's amazing to see how a movement that seemed to fade away actually laid the groundwork for such significant change.
And it wasn't just about school lunches. In 1970, Congress actually approved this massive $243 million program to expand and revamp school lunch programs nationwide. This was a direct response to the campaign's call for federal intervention to address poverty and hunger.
So even though they didn't achieve immediate legislative victories, their persistence and the power of their message resonated in the years that followed.
Exactly. The Poor People's Campaign was a crucial step in shifting public opinion and influencing policy. It helped to create a climate where addressing poverty was seen as a moral imperative, not just a political issue.
But even with those programs, poverty, I mean, it remained a persistent problem, right?
Sadly, yes. Millions of Americans continued to struggle, and the fight for economic justice was far from over.
Which is why decades later, the Poor People's Campaign was revived, right? It's like history repeating itself, but with a renewed sense of purpose.
Precisely. In 2018, a new generation of activists, inspired by the spirit of the original campaign, they launched a revival led by Reverend William Barber and Reverend Lysthea Harris. They picked up the mantle, recognizing that the issues of poverty and inequality were still deeply entrenched in American society.
So it's not just a rehashing of the old campaign. It's a whole new movement building on those foundations.
Exactly. It's rooted in the same principles, the same fight against poverty and inequality, but it's also adapted to the realities of the 21st century. They're addressing issues like mass incarceration, environmental justice, the need for living wages.
So they're expanding the scope, connecting the dots between different forms of injustice.
Exactly. They're arguing that you can't address poverty without tackling systemic racism, economic exploitation, environmental destruction. They're calling for a fundamental shift in how we think about and address these issues.
What's striking to me is how this revival is not just about remembering the past, but about reimagining the future. They're asking us to envision a society where everyone has the opportunity to thrive, regardless of their income or background.
And that vision, that commitment to justice and equality, that's the enduring legacy of the Poor People's Campaign. It's a reminder that the fight is never truly over and that each generation has a responsibility to carry the torch forward.
I think what resonates most with me is the reminder that even in the face of immense challenges, change is possible.
Yeah.
The Poor People's Campaign didn't achieve all of its goals immediately, but it sparked a movement that continues to inspire and motivate people to fight for a better world.
And it highlights the power of ordinary people coming together to demand change. The Poor People's Campaign wasn't just about famous leaders like King and Abernathy. It was about the thousands of people who marched, who organized, who put their bodies on the line for a more just and equitable society.
It's been a privilege to delve into this chapter of American history. What a journey from the poverty witnessed in Marks, Mississippi, to the establishment of Resurrection City, to the lasting impact of their demands. It truly shows the enduring power of hope and the importance of never giving up on the fight for what's right.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I hope our listeners are left with a sense of both inspiration and responsibility. Inspiration from the courage and determination of those who fought for a better future, and responsibility to continue that fight in our own time.
Well said. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Poor People's Campaign. We hope you've gained new insights and perhaps even a renewed sense of hope. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep fighting for a more just and equitable world for all.